My last video debating Hornby's TT120 introduction received a large amount of comments expressing both polar opposite views as well as a whole spectrum of views in between. I had posted a short YouTube poll to go with the video. This has received enough responses now to be statistically significant, so it's time to review those results and correlate them with the views expressed in the comments. Hopefully this will give us a more objective picture on where people stand on this topic and what actions could be taken that might help sway at least a portion of those more negative views that were expressed. It's time to take a closer look. Hi, thanks for joining today. First of all, I want to say a big thank you to everyone who either completed or commented on the poll, and also those who captured their opinions, views and points of information in the video comments. This video wouldn't exist without that input and would all be none the wiser as to where at least this representative portion of the modelling community stands on this particular topic. I want to say a particular thank you to those who clearly took some time in providing their considered feedback and input. Whether you were supportive or not of TT120, you clearly have a passion for this hobby, so thank you for that. Before we get into the results, I want to take a couple of minutes discussing the potential rationale behind Hornby's decision to introduce a UK TT120 range. There's been a lot of debate and speculation on this in the comments. We'll then take a look at the poll results. This will give us a high-level view on where people stand that we can refer back to when we see how it aligns with the comments feedback. Next we'll parse through the comments, and when we get to that section, I'll talk about how I've grouped comments into four main categories, indicative of where people stand on this topic. I've combined the poll comments with the video comments for the purposes of this analysis. In the next section, I want to consider what could be done to perhaps remove some of the adoption barriers for people who have a negative view on this particular topic. We'll then close with a summary and a discussion of the next steps. So let's get into it. I believe Hornby's rationale for investing in TT120 is partly based on the fact that the UK 00 gauge railway model market has become a zero-sum game in recent years, and one in which Hornby's position is being eroded on an ongoing basis. TT120 for the UK market alone would be just a further cannibalisation of an already overcrowded market. It had to be more than that. Yes, there is the potential for attracting new people to the hobby, or back to the hobby as the case may be, but I don't believe that's the primary driver here. I don't have visibility to Hornby's business plan, but the ability to sell UK TT120 models into the European and North American markets, unfettered by competition in the near term at least, has to be a significant motivating factor. If TT120 sales are starting to wane in these markets, as some people have been indicating, then the introduction of UK models could be a major boost to reviving interest in TT120 in these markets. Hornby are already in the continental TT120 market with their Arnold brand, so they will have a perspective on that market, as well as people in-house who are familiar with the challenges of delivering to the TT120 scale. All of these factors point to 3mm never having a chance from day one. 00 gauge will continue as a cash cow for Hornby into the foreseeable future, with the occasional headline model to keep people interested. The goal now will be to get as much of the 00 gauge back catalogue into TT120 form in order to have meaningful product launches in Europe and North America sometime in the next 12 months, or perhaps later depending on the economic climate. All of this is speculation, of course. We must wait and see what happens in reality. At the time of making this video, the poll had received over 400 responses, which statistically gives us a 95% confidence level and a 5% margin of error. From about the point where the poll had received roughly 150 votes, the breakdown across the different responses hasn't changed significantly, with the main change being a reduction in the responses to the first option and an increase in those selecting the last one. This would indicate a slight positive shift in support for TT120 as the debate played out in the comments. Probably not surprising, more than 40% of respondents indicated no interest or no opinion with respect to TT120. We see in the comments the reason behind this. 9% indicated they believed N-gauge had too significant a lead on TT120 for it to catch up, while 6% believed 3mm was a better scale to go with. Interestingly, neither of these responses came out strongly in the comments, which is something that surprised me. When you combine those first three responses, you've got nearly 60% expressing either no opinion or a negative opinion, which is not what we see from the video comments. More on that later. 29% indicate they would like to see more manufacturers involved. This isn't the only inhibitor, however, and the comments will tell us the other main inhibitors. Finally, we come to the cohort who are all in on TT120, and as it happens, this correlates with a particular category from the comments analysis. At 14%, this looks like a relatively small number of people who are willing to run with TT120 as it stands right now. As we'll see, this number could grow significantly if Hornby makes some key decisions and deliver on what they have promised so far. The poll itself is a snapshot, and a high-level one at that, which leaves you with a rather unsatisfactory view of the current state of play. However, when correlated with the breakdown of the comments, we'll get a much better view as to what's behind these numbers and how they could evolve based on certain actions being taken. If you've taken a look at the video comments, you'll doubtless have seen the vast spectrum of views that is far richer and more diverse than anything my motley crew could come up with in the original video debate itself. So how can we convert these into something we can correlate with the poll results? I've gone with an approach of parsing each of the comments for certain views, opinions and expressed actions into groupings and then combining related groupings into 4 categories. Category 1 is that of positive indicators for TT120, which includes people saying they thought TT120 was a good idea, that they liked the space-saving aspect, as well as negative comments with respect to N-gauge that would be supportive of going to TT120. Category 2 is that of positive action indicators, where people have explicitly expressed an intent to adopt, or have already made a pre-order for TT120 elements. We'll see when we look at the numbers how this category correlates closely with the all-in option from the viewer poll. Category 3 is that of inhibitor indicators. These are factors that are holding people back. They may like the idea of TT120, but items in this category are inhibiting them from taking action. Again, we will see a correlation with the poll results here. Finally, we get to Category 4, which captures the blocking indicators. This captures those with a negative disposition to TT120, a negative disposition towards Hornby, or both. It also includes people who are too heavily invested in another scale to make a move, or those with an expressed preference for N-gauge over TT120. Where people have made both positive and negative comments, I've included them both under their respective categories, so the total percentages across the 4 categories will exceed 100% as a result. So let's get into the detail. The first group is that of positive and supporting comments for TT120. 42% expressed a positive view towards TT120, with 22% commenting on the space aspect, 13% referencing the alignment with European or North American TT120 models, and 6% believing it will bring new people into the hobby. In addition, we have 10% expressing displeasure with N-gauge from a size perspective, and 5% not happy with the fidelity of N-gauge models, both of which are supporting comments for TT120. Overall, 52% of comments contained at least one of these groupings in this category. This is higher than the 43% from the poll when you combine those who selected either option 4 or option 5. I believe the discrepancy here is largely due to the fact that for the poll, respondents had to come down either positively or negatively, but not both, whereas they could make comments that included both positive and negative points. In this group, I've included comments that expressed a specific action to adopt TT120 in terms of having already pre-ordered or intending to pre-order or intending to build a TT120 layout. This is effectively a subcategory of Category 1, but I've broken it out here to give us some correlation with the viewer poll. The 16% in this category seems to correlate well with the 14% of those in the poll, indicating they were all in on TT120. This and the blocking indicator category are probably the most aligned with the poll, both in terms of their definition and the actual percentage showing against them. In this category, we are including comments expressing concern over things such as the lack of manufacturer support, the lack of retailer support, and also comments relating to the infancy of the TT120 portfolio in terms of the range of models and the availability of pre-owned models. None of these are necessarily showstoppers, but they are stopping some people from taking the plunge on TT120. And if at least some of them are not addressed in a timely manner, the adoption of TT120 could ultimately be severely impaired. The first option in the poll was that of having no interest and no opinion at this time, and this category attempts to get behind the reasons for selecting this option. The 21% elephant in the room in this category is Hornby, and the lost faith and trust expressed by a disturbingly large number of modelers. You would be foolish to dismiss this grouping as cranks or people expressing Arthur-like sentiments. Those I'm familiar with who express this are experienced modelers with well-considered opinions. There is no smoke without fire, as they say, and some introspection on Hornby's part wouldn't go astray. 18% expressed a view that TT120 would fail, or they wanted it to fail. There is a strong correlation here with the Hornby sentiment. But there are other factors here too, such as those preferring 3mm scale, and the reality of the current economic climate, and hence not the ideal time for introducing a new scale like this. 17% were too heavily invested in their current scale to consider making a move to TT120, or any other scale for that matter. Some people in the comments dismiss this factor, but let's get real here. I sit in this category myself, and not in my lifetime am I likely to see some of my favourite models of all time replicated in TT120. People in this category have £10,000 to £20,000 investments made, not to mention the time spent on their layouts. The only caveat would be those who are downsizing, for example, in which case they are resigned to have to make a significant sell-off. There is also a small grouping of those who intend to build a second layout dedicated to TT120. One O-gauge modeler was even looking at implementing a TT120 circuit on their layout as a garden railway. The last grouping in this category was those who expressed a definite preference for N-gauge if they were to downsize. We know from the poll that there was always going to be a percentage of people in this grouping. So that 45% for this category overall correlates well with the 42% in the poll who expressed either no interest or no opinion on TT120. I think it's fair to say most of the 42% do actually have an opinion, but it's not a positive one. So how can Hornby improve things? Let's start with the inhibiting indicators. Top of the hit parade here is the support for retail channels. If TT120 is to become a mainstream offering, it has to have a retail presence. The retail channels will promote the product and help drive adoption. If the retailers aren't working with you, they're working against you, selling your competitors' products. And this brings me on to the second inhibitor, that of a second manufacturer. I have to believe the other manufacturers are sitting on the fence right now, watching how TT120 does in the market. If they were to see strong retailer adoption and the resulting momentum that would give to TT120, it would be an encouragement for one of them to get off the fence, particularly if they felt they were facing market erosion on either their 00 gauge or N gauge range based on a strong take-up of TT120. If another manufacturer comes on board, this will help with two of the other inhibitors, the available range of models and the time to build up a reasonable back catalogue of TT120 models. The other major impact of getting another manufacturer on board would be a dilution of the Hornby factor, if I call it that. People can now buy TT120 on its own merits, without buying from Hornby. It will take the emotion out of it for those people who have a problem with purchasing from Hornby right now. It didn't get a lot of attention in the comments, but Hornby's current train sets for TT120 aren't really conducive for attracting young modelers. Compare them with Hornby's 00 gauge starter sets with their lower cost points and simpler 040 and 060 locomotives. They need the same for TT120 if they want to win over this segment of the market. It is clear from the poll and the comments that there is a large pool of interest and potential support for TT120. Based on this, Hornby are going into this from a potentially winning position, if they're prepared to make the right next steps. Let's hope their direct sales model is merely a stopgap while they ramp production and attempt to build up some inventory. If they are serious about attracting new entrants to the hobby, then they need some proper starter sets at the appropriate price points, and we need to see those sets in next year's Smith's Toys catalogue and the equivalent in other geographies. As for myself, I've joined the TT120 Modelers Club, and I have the Easterner set on pre-order. Conversion to TT120 isn't an option for me. It's come to the point where I want to see a working TT120 train from Hornby now, rather than talking about them anymore, and I expect that's the same for most of you. Unless TT120 crashes out the gate, which is highly unlikely, the 3mm debate is probably a moot point now. If it wasn't niche already, it definitely will be now. I thought it might have been a better modelling scale than TT120, but I'm willing to accept that that war has been lost, and it's time to move on. Once more, I want to say a big thank you to people who voted in the poll and contributed in the comments. I really hope that someone from Hornby takes the time to go through your feedback and perhaps takes some of the recommendations into account in their future decision making. So thanks for watching again today. Please like, share and subscribe if you found this video of interest. Hope to see you again on the next one. And in the meantime, happy modelling.